Well, welcome. Really glad everyone's still here. We are introducing our social panel for the day. We have 5 really great panelists up here with us. So first we have Beth Stevens. So Beth is president of Soapbox Influence. So she is really focusing on bridging the gap between brands and influencers. Welcome, Beth. We also have Bill Sloan, so National Director of Shopper Marketing with Linkia, influencer marketing, strategically applying influencer programs across retailers, categories, and disciplines. Thanks so much. Also Matt Davis, welcome Matt, VP Client Development for Collective Bias, a social shopper media company publishing user-generated content for brands at scale. We also have Heather Schischler, founder of PassionForSavings.com, helping shoppers save money, live on a budget, and pay off debt through their money-saving community. Great, thanks for coming with us. And we also have Genevieve Rich. So Genevieve is account director for Mojo Marketing, where she is focused on engaging shopper marketing programs that deliver results. And I'm Amanda Danish. I am the Director of Shopper Strategy for Saatchi & Saatchi X. And our focus is on impacting shopper behavior through motivation and facilitation and bringing together what brands, retailers, and shoppers need. So thank you all for being here. We're just going to dive right in.
Let's do it.
I'm just going to assume what everybody thinks you do for a living. All right? I loved those stories, by the way. Thank you for that, Olga. Those were amazing. We want to talk about 3 things that shopper marketers just really care about when it comes to social, which is conversion, selection, and measurement. Measurement, the dirty word that we all think of there. But we'll start with conversion. How do you guys believe that consumer and shopper should think about conversion differently when it comes to social? How does it impact the disciplines differently?
I'm stuck with the mic, so I guess I'm starting. Okay, great. That was a bad choice on my part. I think for us, this is a conversation we have internally quite a bit. It really comes down to something very simple, and that's a clear call to action. There were some recent data around influencer campaigns in general. We all suffer from this and read all of the good, bad, and the ugly on a regular basis. But there was a particular stat that jumped out at me that around 20% of influencer campaigns have a very clear either product or retailer call to action. And without that, the dollars are spent in vain. So that's something that we really focus on, ensuring that we're giving good guideposts for content creation to our influencers. Who's up?
I just echo the exact same thing. I think it's about a very clear understanding at the briefing stage and ensuring that you're arming the influencers with very, very clear direction that still allows them latitude to tell a genuine story and to bring that brand to life in their landscape. But ultimately, we're focused on transactional success. And so we have to have that as the North Star that we're guiding to. So it's really about getting that planning on the upfront and driving towards it.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add to that, in my mind, it's also about integration and scale. So, things are measurable, and if you do enough of them, then you can detangle that. So that's something that we are efforting to do and working on data partnerships and can work with our partners on analyzing that data at scale. So if you have a great program, it should have some impact. And so we'll go into that, open-eyed and partner in terms of looking at that data and the attributional data. Now, it's not perfect because there's not a one-to-one, right? That's the thing that is really difficult. The other thing is that when you're doing social, and I bet you guys have some good perspective on this, is it's kind of 2 things, right? It's, yes, definitely that call to action and weaving in an organic story that their followers are going to find compelling. But then also it is what are the readers or consumers of that doing with it? And a lot of times a barometer is how much are they sharing it with other people? And that's one of the things that we, and I'm sure others do very well, but we measure real time, which is how many times are people sharing it across their platforms? When you take a look at the average person has, 150 plus Facebook friends? Okay, immediately, everybody judge yourselves, count it up. That that evangelism, right? Because that is the new word of mouth, that's very important.
I would say when I think about the difference between consumer marketing and shopper marketing from an in-store perspective, especially trying to drive in-stores, you have to think about the shopper and make the shopper the center of the story. And so many times brands come to influencers and they give us these briefs that are all about the product. And you want to be telling a story to those social, your social following or whatever it is. You want them to understand why that product benefits their life. Give them that motivation, because that motivation is actually going to drive the purchase. So make the shopper the center of your social message rather than your product.
I agree with everything that was just said. No, no, I totally agree. Just to add to it, exactly. The shopper is, core-centric to everything. I usually take it from a kind of a psychological background as far as the shopper goes, and, really using social influence to change behavior patterns in that shopper, I think is key for a thriving kind of social influence.
Have you guys seen anyone doing this really well, or really well specifically at Walmart? So driving that conversion and being able to deliver more of that measurable endpoint that shopper marketers are always so concerned about?
Yeah, well, I think probably everyone on the stage probably has examples of us doing it well and seeing there, and sometimes when we fail. Thank you.
Other than you.
So I not to name any particular brands, I think if we had to define sort of a best-in-class behavior that's going to generate that is, to Matt's point, is integration and partnership. And Mary said it earlier, and Brad said it, and Steven said it. If there's a through line for today, I do think that for me in particular, and that's an area we're really leaning in on. And then again, back to a common brief, a common kickoff, a common set of objectives that we can all work against to extract value across that. Because if you as my partner, I can deliver value in my proposition at no additional cost to the client. And so you're really squeezing significant more efficiency. And I think clients that do that, that's when you're going to get to a more robust understanding of measurement, because I can partner with the other partners as a function of the digital plan to actually, as Brad said earlier, to provide some indirect validation and attribution.
Yeah, just very briefly, that we were going to do this anyway kind of a thing, right? So why not call out what's going on in store, right? And then why not use in-store to open up an experience, right? So virtually every new phone now, if you go to take a picture of something, it actually is a QR reader and will take you right to where you want to go. So we're working on integrating things like that to get you from a physical to a digital. So as we're, kind of going through that, I think that's an important piece. But that integration stuff, right? So if we're talking about blogs, for instance, why not mention, hey, and here's this site, right? Because they're all proud of their sites, right? But that doesn't cost more to do, right? That doesn't, and if you don't have this thing, you can download this thing and your instructions here. That doesn't cost more to do. That's in instructions, right?
I would say, as far as brands that I've seen doing this really, really well, driving a social experience and also driving an in-store experience, one of my favorites is Better Homes and Gardens. They have an excellent influencer campaigns. They have excellent influencer imagery across Instagram, Pinterest, all of that. But when you walk in the store, it's a consistent experience. The product packaging has great lifestyle photos on the packaging, right? That shows you how to use the product, whether it's a candle holder or a tray. The imagery on the signage in the store matches the experience that I'm getting as a consumer on the social. So when I'm on Instagram and I see these great products or these great things and I'm like, oh, that looks awesome. When I walk in the store, all of a sudden I get the same experience and I see all of those products displayed there together with the in-store, and that it helps to almost like confirm. As a shopper, it helps me to confirm like, oh yes, this is what I wanted, or this is what I saw, and it kind of ties me back into that social experience that I had.
I agree. No. So just to add to that, I think I think in years past, people viewed social as more of like a one-off. This is a one-off tactical piece, kind of its own arm. And what I see, companies doing successfully and how they're integrating it is they're fully integrating it in a strategic way. So as opposed to it being a one-off, it's fully integrated into what your sales objective is, what your marketing objective is from the ground up. And you see that continuity from, your pre-trip to your in-store piece to your, post-trip experience, really creating a nice snapshot that's easily influenced by social.
Yeah, and Heather, you mentioned the connection with in-store.
Yeah.
How can we better use social to really even influence the content on e-com to help create that omni-channel, like you said, feeling the same as you go through any experience with a brand?
I think it's really important to start at the beginning of the campaign with two things. One, understanding what is your ultimate goal. What am I, if my ultimate goal is sales in the store, and then partnering with your influencers. Because so many of us, if you can develop a campaign that really highlights the influencer as well as highlights the product, and then you can cross-promote those, there's a lot of value there, right? Like influencers want to work with brands that want to then turn around and promote their stuff. You're paying a lot of money for content sometimes, whether it's, Instagram photos or blog posts or recipes or whatever that is. How can you then maximize that content? Whether it's across, other channels or across other social platforms or through your own social platforms and stuff, how can you partner together? And then I think just, highlighting that at the beginning so that there's that understanding of where this content is going to go, because that might direct how the content is created.
Yeah, it's interesting because we're a spinoff of an in-store company that's been around for about 30 years in this space. And so for the longest time, it was kind of, you just didn't discuss in-store and digital. Those are separate strategies. You talk to separate people. There's no overlap. And we're so delighted to see that coming full circle and those conversations starting to come back around to how do you make sure it's a cohesive experience for the shopper. We were with the NBA this morning. We do a lot of great work with them on both sides of the house for Soapbox, as well as our parent company, Kendall King Group. And something that we never would have touched a couple of years ago, which was showing a display in an actual social post, which was like, oh my God, you just destroyed my grid. Now we're starting to see, a really cool NBA player in the WOW display. And the shoppers, the influencers, are actually going in and interacting and having fun with the display. And then it drives home this idea of, okay, now I know where to find it in store. I know what it looks like. I have a visual cue. And you're seeing this kind of really cool collaborative experience. And for the client, they love it because, for years they were saying, can you show the display in the social post? And we're like, no. And now we're starting to see that be okay in a number of our campaigns. And it's a very simplified but impactful way for the in-store and the social pieces to come together.
So this is my jam. I'm really excited about this. So for myself as a shopper marketer, for my clients, I love optimizing content, especially great content. I don't know about you guys, but when I get a piece of great content, I want to show it off to everyone, like it's a picture of my child, like look at this, it's beautiful, look at this Oreo cookie ball. So what I've noticed the last few years specifically is kind of bridging that gap between in-store and online is being able to do simple things with content. So really optimizing your item pages on Walmart.com with amazing content that you're able to get from your social programs. Really being able to take that content and then use it as drivers for digital media. Being able to geo-target like regional recipes for certain digital campaigns. In-store POS, really fully integrating POS with what you're hearing and seeing online with the social chatter. It's something that makes me very excited, and I love bridging that gap between kind of all walks of your journey.
What have you seen as a barrier to people optimizing their content?
I think sometimes they're scared. I think sometimes it's it can be a little hazy as far as what's going to work in store, what's not. as we all know, whenever you get something printed and in store, especially at Walmart, there's a lot of hurdles sometimes. But I think it's just knowing that you've got a great piece of content that's engaging, that the audience is excited about, that the shopper is going to be excited about, and then being able to show how you're able to influence them before they even get into store, remind them once they're in store to make that purchase, and then once they're out of store, engage them and like invigorate them to share it, because they're going to be pumped and jazzed that they just made this awesome creation that they just saw their favorite influencer make. So
Yeah, and I think it's also about planning. That timeline. So we had, and it's been out in market. So with ConAgra, we did something around holiday and eggnog recipes and things like that in July, so they could get it into the POS, right? And so you have to be thinking that far ahead. And look, the nature of our 3G world, where if you work for a major CPG company, chances are that you guys have done some major downsizing in the last 2 years or are going through it right now. And so everybody has more to do, more to say grace over. And so, as you're looking for partners, you want people asking about what else you're doing, right? And to your point earlier, one of the questions that we're asking more and more is, who's your merchandising company? Why? Because we want to put things on shelf talkers, because we want to open up a digital experience in the store, right? And I'm sure all of us want to do that. And nothing terribly unique there probably, right? But anyway, I just wanted to kind of bring up that point. And so sometimes you need to be doing things with influencers, Christmas in July, kind of a thing.
Yeah, I think that the barrier is a great question. It was touched on in the earlier panel of organizationally, there's this heritage of territorialism, and that's not my job. And Olga made a really great point that I think an e-com duck looks an awful lot like a shopper marketing duck. And I think historically we've said an e-com duck is a sales duck. I don't know why I'm saying duck, but as a proxy for that. So I think that there's this merging and this idea of that's not what I do, or I get my content from the brand and they give it to me in a key visual and I have to go through this process and it takes 8 weeks to work with my agency versus broadening that gaze to say, hey, we want to do things a little differently. And dovetail on your point there, I don't know how many times we've had
Dove and duck.
Dove,
That's really
duck.
not lost.
It's foul language.
Yes, nice.
Get no one. Come on. I'm a dad. Oh, gosh. The idea, we recently had an occasion with a media, we got a brief from a media agency out of Boston, and our first question was, hey, you noted that you're working with a digital media vendor. Can you tell us who that is? Yeah. And they were like, why? Yeah. Well, we want to coordinate with that, and so it was this awkward moment of we have an opportunity here, is the, kind of the through line that we're saying there. So you're dead on.
No more bird jokes. We're going to take a break from that. But no, I totally agree. And we've heard partnerships come up again and again and again. And we, had some good conversations leading into this with some of our great partners in the room. And for us, it really does boil down to how can you be less defensive in this space. We all know that we're nothing without strong partners. And I think one of the things we do well, I know you guys do well, is to just get rid of some of that territorialism and say, hey, we play really well in the sandbox with whoever you're working with, whether that's, an internal agency, a marketer, whoever it may be. We're going to be able to shuck and jive with what they need to see happen, and none of us can thrive and survive in this space if we're partnership averse. So whether that's at the local level, at the digital level, at the data or measurement level, we're nothing without those strong partners. And I think maybe the industry is starting to catch up on that, right? Because I think here is where we're changing a lot of that idea around, hey, partnerships are a good thing, and we're not going to shy away.
Right. And if I can swoop in, sorry. See, last up, nice. One of the things that we're looking about that integration is for those of you who aren't doing a lot of influencer at the shopper level, that a lot of times we have to explain to very large and very small companies and everywhere in between that we're not an agency. We're agency friendly. We love working with your agencies, right? And we take all comers and we'll separate out the businesses accordingly, to make you comfortable. But once they get that, and then you can get to that first call of, no, you can repurpose our content, and here are the conditions under which we can do that. And then the defenses go, and then you start collaborating. So when you're working with your influencer partners, these are bridges that you want to, to get over, and we can help you do that. These are familiar conversations to us, right? So we can help you break down those barriers so you're not just fighting the fight, because it can feel very lonely and very cold doing one of two things. One is doing it by yourself, and then you're going to be caught and beat about the face and head a little bit because you were the rogue element doing something on the Walmart team that wasn't approved by corporate, or trying to go through the mother may I process of working through the corporate team to get something done and engage. And they have influencers here and an agency that does that, and a lot of times that's a different animal, although it may sound similar. We're preaching to the choir here. Any other thoughts?
Let's shift gears really quickly. Let's talk about shiny objects. We all love our shiny objects, right? What are some of those shiny objects that people are asking you more about, or you guys are having to learn a little bit more about to help people understand right now?
There are a lot of them, and we get a lot of questions, and it's funny, like the shiny object that's remained the shiny object has been like Snapchat, right? About what do I get for it, okay? And wow, I can do a filter for a day, but that's a couple $100,000, and I could have done all of these other things for that. And our bias, pun intended, is collective bias, is that we want to do things we can measure. And that's been one of the chief difficulties with the Snapchat universe, is it doesn't have that on the back end. But so if you ground yourself back in the math of the platforms, and then I'll shut up and give it to Jen here, is if you ground yourself in the math of the platforms, the largest messaging platform out there right now is Facebook Messenger. It's a little over twice as big as Snapchat and has complete overlap with the people that are using Snapchat because they baked it in endemic to having a Facebook account. Those conversations, that is where new marketing channels are opening up. And I know we're thinking along some of the similar lines here. So engaging people there in conversations is really exciting. And that's some of the work that we're ardently doing presently.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. I think, too, when we think of, there's a lot of shiny things that are out there, and I think it's very specific to what your true objective is. There's, I don't know, there's lots of shiny things. No, so when we think about, for us, the trendy words that everyone's concerned about. So right now, OGP. Whoever's the gatekeeper of OGP, I want to become friends with, and let's hang out. So, but I think if we focus more so on what our key objectives are and our key tactics are, I think overall it will make your social strategy thrive. And we have to think about really who our demographic is, that segmentation too. So, as I know, a Maxwell House coffee drinker, they still subscribe to magazines. That's not so shiny to some people. A Red Bull drinker, not so much. There's room for a little shine there. So I think it's just really also making sure that we don't lose that core demographic of who we're targeting based on all the shiny things, because it can get loud sometimes. But I'm excited about chatbots personally.
I just wanted to kind of mention a few things that are coming, maybe they're shiny right now and they're not, exactly what you should be focusing on yet, but coming. Instagram TV, growing fast. I don't think necessarily that it's been adapted into the Instagram app very well, but really fast it's going to be coming, and it has some great potential for cross-promotion through other Facebook channels, sending it out through bots, email subscribers, all of that. There's a lot that you could do starting to build that. Chatbots, great for personalization and things like that. Even with influencers, a lot of your influencers are on those kind of things and starting to build networks and almost like subscriber lists. So then how can you then partner with them to reach those people and kind of build a bigger data picture?
Yeah, and I just want to share one brief thing that's kind of amongst this new news is, so imagine, you have Snapchat over here and you don't have the measurement. It's half the size of Facebook Messenger. That's an excellent place for a chat bot. But imagine not having to download a new app to take somebody all the way through purchase. Okay, so what if you could do a seamless rebate where I didn't need an app, but I could do receipt capture? those are very interesting things and things that we're opening out in the marketplace as we speak.
Yeah, a chatbot is something, if you haven't explored that, I would definitely encourage you to, so I won't, beleaguer that. I think Reddit is a platform that's untapped from a marketing perspective. It has, certainly some kind of unique qualities to it, but there's some emerging things there. And I think someone told me this about 2 weeks ago, the shiniest new object is probably back of house, and it's not even anything that we necessarily have control over, because it's able to stitch that together, and the shiny object that's able to make that back of house, the shopping experience seamless, that's the golden ticket. That's really what's exciting.
I noticed as marketers, we immediately converted away from shiny objects to avoid and told you the shiny objects that we love.
Absolutely.
So I'll continue that trend and just say, not new. I mean, much like bringing up Reddit in a conversation today, I feel like podcasts are so overlooked. And we've been shouting it. Clients are they're risk averse when it comes to podcasts, because even though they're not new, it feels scary and different from a marketing perspective, but I think it's definitely overlooked. And I was just thinking, as you talked about Messenger, and when we start to geek out, all of us up here, and use terms like dark social, we forget that there are so many clients who are very sophisticated in this space. But in this market and every other market like it, there are so many people that social is still brand new, and it's completely overwhelming and intimidating. And that doesn't mean that they're a small company. There's just an amazing number of folks who still are not tapping into this. They're not sure. They're dragging their feet. And so I know all of us probably find ourselves, as I'm sure you all do, in the stage of counselor and saying, this is okay, and here's how you can test and learn and dip a toe into the water, and don't worry yet about chatbots. Let's just get you active in this space. And I think that's shocking, and yet something that we've got to remember as we go into all of these conversations.
Yeah.
Just to put kind of a point on it, and Jen said it earlier, is like shopper utility. Like, ask yourself at every stage of the process, is this providing shopper utility? Are we keeping the shopper at the center of it? Because oftentimes just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something. If I bring up QR codes from 10 years ago, there was, we just ruined that as an industry. Like, we just embraced it and we stickered on everything, and it totally was. So again, I think what we did is we eschewed the shopper, and we lost sight of that.
To that point where we're talking about like shelf talkers and things like that, and how do I engage somebody digitally? Absolutely right? So QR codes were completely bastardized, because when you went to them, what did you get? You got throwaway content, okay? And so anybody, who's over 40 might get this reference of, it's like you decode it and it's like, drink more Ovaltine, and you're like, this wasn't the message I was hoping for. But the best QR code is a QR code that nobody knows is a QR code, because actually you've simplified it, which speaks exactly to what Bill was saying, which is take out your phone, open up your camera, snap picture, and the technology will take it from there. Okay, so it doesn't need to even look like a QR code. There are fun things that you can do. So you're going to see the resurgence of them, and nobody's going to mention that name, and they're going to bury the name and bury the shovel they buried it with, right?
So with what you guys have been talking about, how do you begin to set clients' expectations? So every bit of social does something different. Every shiny object has a different purpose. As we spoke about this morning, you want to use some pieces to drive conversion, some pieces are driving awareness. How do you begin to set those expectations to make sure that you are delivering on your promise?
I think Bethany and I actually had this conversation last week, because the first thing I'm going to ask a client or a brand is, what is your goal? What are you trying to accomplish? Is this an awareness, especially as an influencer? Sometimes we get awareness campaigns. We're just trying to get this new product out there. I'm just trying to drive as many impressions as I can. Or some brands are actually trying to drive sales, right? Like, what are you trying to accomplish? Because that is going to affect, if you're going to ask me to drive, if you're trying to drive sales and you're using Ibotta redemptions or Shopkick or something like that to try to track that, then that's important for me to know as an influencer, because I want to make that prominent in my content, right? If that's going to be the measurement goal. But if impressions is the measurement goal, then maybe the content is a little more catchy, right? A little more, going to drive a little more traffic, going to drive a little more engagement. Like, what are we trying to measure that's really going to affect how you set up the content and how you run the campaign?
Yeah, and just a small point on that. There is that kind of that notion of I'm doing something because I'm getting a thing and I'm getting a measurable result out of it. That on its face is laudable, but a lot of times doesn't make sense, because sometimes the mechanisms that people use for, I did something and I got a thing for it, and I can prove that I got that thing for it. Well, okay, great, but let's just say, without naming any names, that that thing is comprised of deal switchers who will do anything for a discount or some sort of value, okay? So if I'm doing that and I'm routinely going back to that and I'm saying, now I did a thing and I could prove back that I did a thing, I will tell you that I was on a conference call with one of our brand partners, and it was the first time I had ever heard this, and it was a big open panel conference call thing, so it wasn't a closed thing. It was a Coca-Cola person in Atlanta talking about marketing mix modeling, okay? And everybody just got a shiver here about marketing mix modeling, because we don't fit into that very well. It is meant to measure huge scale numbers of impressions, and was basically meant to measure and deliver results on what it was told to measure and deliver results on in the early 2000s, right? That person at that conference who was giving that webinar was saying, well, they're also incorporating lifetime value of a customer. Am I converting a new person? What level of evangelism am I getting, particularly for new items and things like that? So when you take all of those things into the mix, then the tyranny that we hear from corporate with our Walmart shopper partners is, I need ROI, I need ROI, I need ROI. That's very important, and guess what? Displays are still really important. That's why we take pictures of the display in every blog post that we do, unless you tell us differently. Because if anybody remembers back to, not that many years ago, but to 1963, at least the episode in Mad Men, when he was getting the display of Heineken, and Betty ended up buying it because it was on display, and then she was embarrassed at the dinner party. I can tell you more later offline. Displays still matter, right? And connecting those things is still important. So if you can help that happen, that in and of itself is an ROI, because your buyers got excited about it and they saw the value of it. So there are a number of layers of ROI that you can get to.
We're just going to pass this back and forth. I will 100% jump in on that, because we sat yesterday with a buying team, and obviously, I mean, you have different levels of knowledge and sophistication around social and marketing in general. But one thing that we've heard loud and clear from the buyers that we've talked with recently is, hey, bring me some innovation. What that one slide in your deck at the line review where you tell me you're doing social is not cutting it. And they're getting more and more sophisticated. They're reaching out and asking for solutions. And they expect their suppliers to be bringing programs that are going to push the envelope, that are going to drive sales, but that are going to make them happy. I mean, to oversimplify, the buyer wants to see the results too. And if you're operating in a silo in building those programs out and just focusing in on the thing, that the client is saying, this is what I've got to do. You know, and it takes some boldness there. It takes asking some hard questions and really digging in to understand the objective, to Heather's point. Why are we doing this? And we always say, what's your buyer looking for? That thing may not be the same as your thing, and how do we at least take that into consideration with the program?
Absolutely. So we did get started a little bit late, but we don't want to keep everybody over. But I do want to give each of you guys a chance to let everybody know, if you ask that they only take one thing away from today when it comes to social and shopper marketing, what would that be?
I'll go first. So I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget it. I just said to be bold and have passion for what you do. Passion leads to inspired ideas, and it's those ideas that lend a fresh perspective to an ever-changing industry. And so it's something that I, as a marketer, we live in a very fast-paced industry, and it's an industry that is ever-changing, and we are constantly having to change and, adapt. And I find that when I let passion lead me in my strategy and in my ideas, I find it to be just more fulfilling. And that's what I would say.
I would say develop a consistent experience from social through your store. So that when the buyer, I want my readers, when they walk into the store and they've heard me tell them about a great product or a sale or whatever that is, I want them to walk into the store. I want them to be able to find the product. I want them to have a consistent experience so that they have confidence in making that purchase. That consistency is really key, and you want to tell one consistent story from your social experience through your store.
Yeah, I mean, really, that same message, which is connect the digital, the social to the store, and then vice versa. And there are easy ways to do that. A lot of times it's just a matter of planning and coordination. Ask more of your partners, and we should be up for doing that because the programs go better. We were just looking at another new product, text rebates. Okay, imagine not needing in the app, being able to execute this all within my text app. Guess what? The results go up 50% if you have shelf talkers. Okay, it's not a new thing, it's just planning.
Yeah, planning, I think that, as we've said earlier, that integration and a common brief and a common kickoff, and as Matt said earlier, it's a resource-constrained world, whether you're agency on the client, so there's just fewer people doing it. So allow your partners and allow the vendors to come together and honor that. And, the famous Ogilvy quote is, give me the freedom of a tight brief. Like, have an input document, everyone aligns on, and then allow smart people that are in this room to go and do that work.
That's good. Genevieve, it sucks to be the last person. Yes, I agree. No, I would agree with those points. I think I would add, and this probably seems a little left field, one thing that we really enjoy in our programs is the element of customization, which is really difficult, right, to scale and also, to your point, honor what's appropriate for that client. We see a lot of, I don't know if you all encounter this, but it's easy to perceive agencies and teams like this in this space as middlemen. And we have so many conversations from teams who, oh, I've got a PR agency handling influencer for me, or, oh, no, we handle that ourselves, and we're just stop. Because number one, it's like herding cats, right? And just the legalities, and we see a lot of people who are on the other side of, yeah, we tried to manage that ourselves internally, and never mind, right? Yeah, exactly. So I know that sounds very self-serving, but we're all experts in our space, and we take pride in what we do. We are passionate about it, clearly. And when you go to someone who is really the expert in that space, you're going to get the results that you would expect. So yeah, that's all I've got.
Wonderful. Well, although we don't have time for questions, please make sure and grab, do we have a couple minutes? Questions. Excellent.
You have to speak over the
Now
mower.
somebody has to. No? You guys must have been good.
Yes.
You guys are amazing. All right then. Well, thank you to all of our panelists. And if you guys do think of questions regarding social, make sure and grab one of them throughout the day.